Picks his way to the right and is tripped up, reaching for the end zone. Touchdown. What a start.
Give it to Reed, and there he goes. Nobody's going to catch him. Touchdown.
It's caught. Jeremiah Smith. Touchdown, Ohio State. The legend grows.
This is Chasing the Natty, a college fantasy football podcast. All right, good evening, everyone. This is Jared Palmgren, host of the Chasing the Natty podcast. Hope you guys are having a wonderful time on this Tuesday night, on this semi-final week of College Fantasy Football 2025. We are the College Fantasy Football Podcast on the Campus to Canton Podcast Network. You can find us on all of your podcast feeds and on YouTube every Monday and Tuesday night during the season. If you want to support the great work we do here, head on over to campustocanton.com. Subscribe there with any of our phenomenal tiers. We got content ranging on all sorts of college football games, whether it is CFF, Devy, C2C, College IDP, College DFS, Underdog Best Balls. If you play it, then we've got content, whether that's tools, rankings, pretty much everything you need to succeed. In fact, right now, if you want to support the show directly, make sure when you sign up for one of our yearly membership tiers, you use that promo code NATTY, N-A-T-T-Y, to get 10% off your yearly membership. Again, that is promo code NATTY, N-A-T-T-Y. If you can't do that, totally understandable. You can just show us some love by making sure on this stream right now, you hit that like button down below. Make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you fill that chat with plenty of questions, reactions, and stuff like that tonight. Helps us out a ton. It gives the old YouTube algorithm a good boost here. And then, obviously, if you're on the podcast side of things, make sure you leave a 5-star review. Make sure you're following the show. Not only does that show us support, but also shows the entire game of college fantasy football in general a ton of support. If you have any questions or want to get in touch for whatever reason, you can find me in the show on Twitter. I'm at CFF_Jared. The show is at Chasing the Natty. And if you want to find the guy that's sitting across from me right now, Mr. Justin Leo, a.k.a. Volume Pigs of VolumePigs.com. You can find him on Twitter at VolumePigs. Keeps it real simple for you guys. Justin, welcome to the show, man. Glad I could have you on tonight.
Hey, man. Yeah, no, it's good to be back. As I was saying in the pre-show, it wouldn't feel right to go the full season without appearing on here at least once. So, yeah, glad to be back, man. Thanks for having me.
Nah, I'm glad to have you on, man. You do so much for the college fantasy community. Again, I think we have a lot of great writers, obviously, in this space. But, like, I feel like you were the one that really kind of came in and kicked the whole industry's butt into gear when it came to it. Your content is very, very high quality, and anybody should be subscribed to it if they are a CFF listener or player. Yeah, again, appreciate all of you guys tuning in tonight. Again, we still got a really good crowd, which is good news on all fronts, because if you're listening to this, and if you're here live, that means one of two things. One, you're still alive in your college fantasy leagues, which is awesome. Congratulations to each and every one of you. You should give yourself a pat on the back, because this is hard work. As much as some of you guys will credit me in the comments to say, like, oh, this is all you and everything. No, guys, you guys are the ones that pulled the triggers on every decision you make in your leagues. And so, like, give yourselves a pat on the back. It's a lot of hard work to get here. And even if you are here and you're not in your semifinals this week, that just means you love us. And I appreciate you having you all the same. Again, you guys know the drill by now. It's week 13. Start sit questions are the main source of this show, but we are totally down to answer other questions as well. I have my rest of season rankings pulled up. If any of you guys got questions about that, obviously we'll be looking at the weekly projections from campustocanton.com. In addition, if you guys have questions about, oh my God, I can't speak. If you got questions about what's going to happen next year, like, do we think a guy transfers? Do we think a guy goes to the NFL or not? Those are questions I'm totally down to take here at the end of the season as well. So, all that being said, let's go ahead and throw up our projections over at campustocanton.com on the screen here. Refresh the page so that I can actually get them to work. And let me scroll back to the top of the chat. And Justin, I say we go ahead and start answering some of these start sit questions. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. First question comes to us from Tom Cross, our friend across the pond. He says, hey man, having a real debate filling my last two flex spots. Standard PPR scoring, which I assume means 0 PPR scoring. My options are Anthony Smith, wide receiver out of East Carolina, going up against UTSA. Sheldon Sampson, wide receiver out of Louisiana Lafayette, going up against Arkansas State. Danny Scudero going up against San Diego State. Or Keyjuan Brown, the running back out of Louisville, going up against SMU. So, Justin, I'll throw it over to you first, man. What are your initial thoughts while I plug these into the weekly projections here?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, all 4 of those options are obviously pretty solid. They've been pretty good this year. I guess just sort of one by one, Keyjuan Brown, they play SMU this week. SMU defensively are pretty good this year. That's one thing I would sort of keep in mind with him. Although, his role there with Louisville, it's, he's clearly the RB1. And even if they're trailing, he probably gets some work receiving. So maybe it's not it's not the end of the world. SMU has a really good defense. He can probably still have a good game. Sheldon Sampson, he's sort of came on strong late in the season. I like what he's been doing. I think that's a great matchup for Arkansas State. Should be a lot of points scored.
Yeah.
Really, I like a lot of the players in that game. Scudero, he's actually kind of gone cold, the last couple of weeks, and they play a tough defense as well this week. San Diego State, who in particular I think are really good, if I'm not mistaken, going off memory right now, but I'm pretty sure against the pass is where they're really strong. But I know just overall they're really good defensively.
Number 11 against the pass.
Yeah, so I mean that could be troubling, could be a problem. I mean, it could not be also. I mean, it's just another Mountain West Conference team, so you never really know. And Scudero, like if he ends up seeing 20 targets, then it's probably not going to matter. And then who is the 4th player?
Anthony Smith, wide receiver out of East Carolina.
Oh yeah, East Carolina. And who are they playing?
UTSA.
UTSA. That's another pretty good matchup that probably will be pretty high scoring. And the thing I like about Anthony Smith is when he scores, he usually scores from a distance. Like he's kind of their long touchdown guy, or he gets a lot of long receptions. So he could be cold all game, and then all it takes is a couple of receptions, and that's it'll be a good day for him. Generally, and because it's not PPR, I tried to skew towards the running backs, but I don't know about that SMU matchup. Again, I'm going off memory, but if my memory serves, SMU has a pretty solid defense. Don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it could be sort of tougher sledding for the run game for Louisville. So I don't know. Initially, I wanted to choose the running back. I might still do that. I think maybe Shelton Sampson or Keyjuan Brown are probably the 2 that I'm sort of thinking about. But as I've sort of laid out, I can see the reasoning behind choosing any of these guys. But we're trying to split hairs here, so I'm trying to pick out some reasons for why one over the other. And generally, I just like running backs over wide receivers because the workload will be there, and even if they're trailing, he should get some receiving work, which should give him a solid production on the day, hopefully.
Yeah, you're 100% right about us splitting hairs here. I mean, good Lord, Keyjuan Brown, Anthony Smith, Shelton Sampson are all within 10 spots of each other in our overall rankings at campus2canton.com. All of these guys, outside of Danny Scudero, being projected between 14 and 15 points. Scudero being projected pretty high is not surprising given the fact that I think he's wide receiver 2 on the year, but you pointed it out, Justin, he's been real cold recently. And I don't think people realize just how cold. We're talking single-digit performance, especially in non-PPR, 3 out of the last 4 weeks. We're talking this isn't just cooling off. This is like man got shot by Mr. Freeze's gun here, right? So definitely worrisome. And like we just pointed out, San Diego State, we usually think of Sean Lewis and we think of a great offense, but he's really put together a really solid defense at San Diego State this year. I would legitimately sit Scudero, as crazy as that sounds this week, if you have better options. And Tom, I will say, I think you have good options here. Keyjuan Brown, Justin, you are 100% correct about SMU's rush defense, at least in terms of their numbers. They're really solid. I think they're top 15 against the run. I know they're pretty up. Yeah, number 14. So giving up just over 100 rush yards per game. But here's the thing. Clemson's right down here at 21st. Keyjuan Brown ran for 135 yards on them last week. That's a solid run defense as well. And the only reason why they're even this low, because they were right next to SMU last week, is because of Kejuan Brown. I think Kejuan Brown is a matchup-proof guy at this point. He's just a really good running back. And SMU's secondary, much like Clemson's, is pretty horrific. So Louisville should still be able to move the ball, even if for some reason Kejuan Brown does get kind of stood up. And that to me says scoring opportunities. And given the last couple of weeks where Kejuan Brown for some reason just isn't getting any goal line work whatsoever in favor of 185-pound Duke Watson for some reason, I think that'll bounce back at some point. I think Kejuan Brown has a really good shot of finding the end zone in this game. So I would lean Kejuan Brown for sure. And to me, that would leave Anthony Smith or Shelton Sampson. And I think I'm just going to lean towards the guy who's been hot recently. We'll go with Shelton Sampson in what should be a relatively high-scoring matchup there in Louisiana, Arkansas State. Actually, let me go ahead and take a look here on CBS Sports. Okay, over under 54.5. So not great, but not horrific. I think Shelton Sampson, you can pretty solid bet that if Louisiana scores 4 touchdowns, he'll find the end zone at least once. So. All right, let's move on to the next question here. This one comes to us from Micah Bryant. He says, hey, Jared. I'm going to assume he says, hey, Justin as well. I don't think he knew you were coming on tonight. Thanks for the work you put in making fantasy football great. I appreciate you, Micah. Do you have a question? Do I start Jaden Barnes versus Marshall or Mod Hardy versus Oklahoma in my flex? Woo. Justin, your initial thoughts.
So is this PPR, non-PPR, this format?
He does not say. Micah, if you're still in the chat, go ahead and drop to us if it's PPR or not.
Well, Mod Hardy's coming off like a monster performance, if I remember correctly.
300 yards versus Mississippi State last week.
Yeah, that's right. So obviously, Oklahoma's a little different. That defense is not Mississippi State, but I don't know. Ahmad Hardy, I'd want to know, and maybe I can just look on Fantrax, like what did Hardy do when they played Alabama? Maybe that would be sort of a good barometer to try to gauge.
That was not one of his better performances.
No, because that would be sort of a data point I might leverage when making this decision, just as a comparable to see like, okay, well, how did he do in a game against another strong defense where they probably lost? Yeah, I mean, they actually didn't lose, but like it was a close game, but it was a very poor sort of rushing day, it looks like, for him. Not even terrible, actually. He averaged 4.3. Just, they probably weren't running the ball that much, and that looks that was the case with only 12 carries.
They weirdly got away from him in that game. I'm not sure what Kirby Moore's thought process there was, because in the first drive that Mizzou had, like I'm pretty sure a good chunk of his yardage came on that first drive. And you can see, like you kind of pointed out, like 20 plus touches in almost every game except for that one. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's a matter of, do we think that's going to happen again here against Oklahoma? I'm not so sure.
And also there's the A&M data point as well, where they lost also, but he ran the ball decently well, actually pretty well on the yards per carry basis. They just probably weren't playing with the lead that much that game. And that's another, I think, comparable defense and sort of comparable maybe game script. I think Ahmad Hardy, you could probably feel safe just starting him. And, if it happens to be the case that he does what he did against Alabama, then maybe you live with that. But he's been really, really good, recently. And I don't know. I mean, you sort of know what you're going to get with him. He's the bell cow of that team. I know Oklahoma's defense is pretty good this year, but so is A&M's, and he had a pretty solid day there. And, against Bama, he was averaging a pretty good yards per carry, just, sort of the game script got away from him. And if that happens, it happens. I think you kind of have to just take that chance.
Alabama's offense is a much better offense than Oklahoma's has been this year. I think Missouri is going to be able to keep this within a manageable spread, even if Oklahoma does take a lead at some point. I don't think it'll ever be by more than double digits. And so I think that'll always kind of keep Hardy in here. Obviously, we don't have a lot of receiving work for Hardy this year. So again, if the game script does get out of hand, things can get pretty ugly pretty quickly there. But I just really don't see that happening here. It's just a matter of you stare down the fact that this Oklahoma defense is number 2 in the country in rushing yards allowed per game. A lot of that, to be fair, has to do with the fact they sack quarterbacks over and over and over again, so that negative yardage really piles up. But it also is tackles for loss, right? Meanwhile, we haven't really talked about his other option here much in Jaden Barnes going up against Marshall. I actually was asked this by somebody in the Campus Again Discord earlier about what do I think about Barnes this week in general. Barnes definitely fell off a cliff last week when App State played James Madison. But James Madison, god dang, that is a good defense for a G5 team. And I would pay more attention to what he was doing in the weeks coming up here. 13 targets versus Old Dominion, 19 targets versus Georgia Southern. Marshall, terrible passing defense. Like, we're talking, I think, bottom 10 in the country, giving up 284 yards per pass. It's pretty crystal clear, like, when App State is able to move the ball, this is the guy they're going to. So, to me, it's a matter of, do we play matchup here, or do we start your stud? What would you rather do, Justin?
In the playoff, I'd probably just start the guy who probably got you here. And as you know, I'm always more partial to running backs, and without sort of knowing if it's PPR or non-PPR, I just think Hardy's probably at least in for 10, 15 touches at least, and that sort of, I know it's a tough run defense, but I don't know. I think you kind of just got to go with the guy who's an entrenched starter. He's going to get a lot of touches. He's been pretty productive, really productive recently. So I'd roll Hardy.
I play it safe as well because, again, I'm looking back at some of these games where, again, granted, tougher competition in some of these games, but boy, he can have some, like, Barnes can have some real dud performances. I would just go with Hardy, go with the guy that's going to get 20-plus touches, and just hope he falls into the end zone once or twice. So. And our projections, by the way, do prefer Hardy. He's a top 12 running back for us this week. Barnes still pretty good as well, but only a top 33 wide receiver. All right. Headgear Insights, it says, I appreciate all you do for the CFF community. Hope to be like you when I grow up. Dude, you are a married man with 3 kids. I know this for a fact. There is no when I grow up, buddy. That's my buddy Austin. I can give him crap. Anyway, he's got a wide receiver dilemma here for one spot. Junior Vandeross versus Ball State. DeMarcus Lacey, I assume, versus App State, or Nick McMillan versus Miami of Ohio. So, Justin, I'll throw it over to you. Those 3 wide receivers.
Oh. Okay, yeah. So 3 sort of G5 wide receivers. I know Nick McMillan has been on fire recently, but that Miami of Ohio defense is no joke. They're pretty good for MAC standards. Not that that's really the be all end all. I mean, he can still have a good day. Junior Vandeross against Ball State, that's a pretty clean profile. I mean, he's sort of the wide receiver 1 there at Toledo, and there's nothing about Ball State that really scares me or gives anything of note to think that, well, we can't start Vandeross because of this or that. Ball State's just sort of a poor team, poor defense. So, no problem with starting Vandeross if you want to do that. This Marshall App State game could get pretty wild. I think it could be a pretty high scoring game. I know we just talked about that with Barnes. And you're picking with just wide receivers here, and so inherently all of them are pretty volatile. So there's randomness there, right? With any of them, you're gonna have to kind of take that risk. I don't know. They're all pretty similar, kind of to me, and I guess the projections sort of agree with that. So if you're gonna split hairs on it, you maybe try to go with what you think is a better matchup, which I believe Vandeross and Lacey kind of have easier defenses. I think the safest one is Vandeross. I mean, he's been productive there for 2 years now, and we really know a lot about him. He's definitely their wide receiver 1, and he's playing an easy defense. Lacey was more of a breakout this year, but I mean, he's been pretty gosh darn good for Marshall as well. So, can't really go wrong with either of those 2, even Nick McMillan. I'd probably go Vandeross. He just seems like a more known commodity, and there's really nothing for me to point out that would be like, well, this is not great. I mean, really everything about him this week, I think is pretty good. So.
Yeah, I'm taking a look here real quick because I was trying to remember exactly where these guys sit on the season in terms of where they're at. And Vandeross, wide receiver 13 on the season. A lot of good performances here recently. No game-breaking performances for sure, but very safe floor option. Like you said, Ball State, not a defense anybody's really staying awake at night for. Meanwhile, Lacey's a little bit further down here, if I remember correctly. But that's because, again, he kind of took a while to get going. Can't find him off the top of my head or off the off rip here, but I would agree with you that Nick McMillan easily the biggest. I don't even want to say bust potential because I think he'll still have a good week against Miami of Ohio, but that's a real low scoring affair there, right? I think might have been one of the lowest over unders of the week at under 40. So again, touchdowns will be at a premium in that game. Kind of talked about it already. App State, Marshall, over under a 54.5. Both of those secondaries are so bad. I can easily see that game hitting the 60s. That's not betting advice. That's just my general vibe on that game where, two bad defenses could end up being a bit more of a shootout. And then, Toledo. Meanwhile, Toledo, Ball State, not as high of an over-under as you'd want, but man, is Toledo a big favorite in this game. So you should expect them to kind of roll here. That'll probably mean that Vander Ross finds the end zone at least once. I would definitely sit McMillan. I think I still go Vander Ross. Again, a top 15 wide receiver on the year. Just a very safe floor bet here in the playoffs. All right, CD is up next with his question. It says, hey, Jared and Justin, which quarterback to start in a 6-point passing touchdown? Micah Alejado versus UNLV, Alonzo Barnett versus Washington State, or Taylon Green at Texas? So Justin, your quick thoughts on those three guys.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, well, I worry about Taylon Green this week. I feel like Texas are going to be pretty fired up this weekend to sort of bounce back after getting just absolutely demolished, as they always do against Georgia last weekend. Sorry, Texas fans, just had to throw that shot in there. Yeah, I mean, Taylon Green's been like, he's kind of Jekyll and Hyde this year, right? Like when they are in competitive games or playing a team that they're better than, he tends to do really well. And then if that's not the case, he has a really, really tough day. And I think Texas's defense is probably in that latter category where Arkansas maybe will have a hard time moving the ball. Micah Alejado playing against, who are they playing against? I can't really. Oh, UNLV. Oh, so that game could be really good because both teams have pretty strong offenses. Hawaii's defense, I think, is a little better this year than usual, but still not good. And UNLV's defense is also just nothing really to be scared about. So I do quite like that matchup. Alonzo Barnett, he's so boomer bust. I feel like this year, like he'll either be the highest scoring quarterback on the slate, or he will have a fairly forgettable day. It seems like every other week. And this is an odd sort of late season matchup, to be honest, as well. Like it's an out of conference, I guess, matchup with JMU and Washington State. It's kind of hard to know like how these two teams compare to each other because they don't really play a lot of the same teams. So that one just kind of seems like, well, if you really want to swing, like if you feel like you need to take a chance this week and you need like some huge score from your quarterback spot to win, Barnett sort of stands out in that category. I think if you want to play it a little safer and just sort of, okay, I need 25, 27 points, even maybe 24, 23 points, I think Alejado would be the one I'd be looking at. Obviously Green has like that upside in him because we've seen what he can do this year. I just don't think this is one of those matchups where that's going to happen. Of course, I could be wrong, but Texas's defense is pretty good. I know they just got torched by Stockton, but that's a different caliber of team from Arkansas. So probably I would go with Alejado, just playing it safer. But I do like the upside of the other two. And if you want to swing, just because you feel like you need to, I think Barnett would be the one I'd swing with. But Green kind of has an element of that too.
Yeah, Texas, I've talked about specifically LSU and Florida recently about how they are teams that have kind of quit. And so like you might see a good defensive performance to this point in the season, but maybe doesn't translate the rest of the season. I don't think Texas is quite there. They still believe that they have a shot at the playoff, and that requires them to beat both Arkansas and Texas A&M. How are they going to do that? They need to clamp down on defense because they can't rely on that offense. And so I think that defense will continue to step up. That's a danger spot for Green. I fully agree with that. Barnett, you kind of said was kind of up and down. That was more beginning of the season. That's why I kind of looked him up here because I was like, yeah, really every single week since then, 24 plus points. But you're 100% right that Wazoo defense, one, looked terrible at the beginning of the season, has really kind of bounced back. Let me check. Yeah, top 20 versus the pass, and really, really solid against the run as well. My computer will keep up with me. Yeah, so they're top 35 versus the run as well. So I definitely think that could be a little bit of a dangerous spot, as much as, again, Alonso has been just torching a ton of great teams this year. I think that I would lean towards Alejado here, especially, again, I forgot to reiterate, this is a 6-point passing touchdown league. Like, Alejado gets a boost from that, right?
Yeah.
I would go with that. The matchup's really nice. Let me see. UNLV. Yeah, over under 64.5. Yeah, give me that all day long. 6-point passing touchdown. Yeah, I think you got to go Alejado here. So, let's move on to J Army Train. He says, "Hey, or what's up, Jared and Justin? Projected as a 35-point underdog on Fantrax right now, hoping for the upset. I need two wide receivers in a non-PPR league. We got Camden Brown out of Georgia State going up against Old Dominion this week. Wyatt Young versus Rice, or Vander Ross versus Ball State." So, Justin, we talked about Vander Ross already. We like that matchup this week. What are your thoughts on Camden Brown against Old Dominion and Wyatt Young versus Rice?
Yeah, well, first of all, to the person who asked, the Fantrax projections are so spotty. I wouldn't worry too much about that. And
Like,
I think you got
three studs here. Like, whoever you're facing must
I
have
was
just
just
a
gonna say,
monster team.
Yeah, there must be some real deficiencies at other positions or something. Because you got some really good options here at wide receiver. As you mentioned, Jared spoke about Vander Ross. Really clean profile this week. I don't think you can really fault anybody for choosing to start him if you start him. Camden Brown has been on fire this year, and I know they play a sort of tougher defense in Old Dominion this week. I don't know that I really think Old Dominion is going to be good enough to like shut them down, though. I think Georgia Southern's good enough on offense. They're probably going to do their thing as well. And then Wyatt Young, another one who, I think injuries kind of like gave him an opportunity, and then he sort of took it and ran with it. And now he's just, he's a really, basically, he's the feature guy in that offense, wide receiver. And that's a good offense to be the wide receiver one for CFF purposes. And that's a great matchup against Rice. They'll probably do what they want on offense, and that can go both ways. It could just be Caleb Hawkins scoring 5 touchdowns again, or it could be Wyatt Young. And even then, I think, but even then, right, with Hawkins scoring all the touchdowns last week, I think Wyatt Young still got 1 score and actually had a pretty good day. So it doesn't take much for wide receivers, especially if you're in a PPR league, which I don't remember if that was the case here.
Non-PPR.
Non-PPR. Well, okay, so it's much more about yardage and touchdowns than for you. I don't know. Gosh, choosing between these three is honestly, I don't know that like there's one thing I can really pick on. I still do like Vander Ross because it's an easy defense. We know he's going to get quite a few targets. They're going to score a lot of points. Just hope that he's one of them who catches a touchdown. I would pretty much say Wyatt Young or Vander Ross would be my top 2, only because they're playing like soft defenses versus Camden Brown. He's just as good as the other 2 in terms of just like what he's been doing all year, but Old Dominion's a slightly better defense. Of course, that could work in the opposite favor. It could just be, Old Dominion and Georgia Southern are in like a full 60-minute possible overtime back and forth game, and that forces both teams to, keep the foot on the pedal versus, say, Toledo or North Texas. They may be sort of taking a commanding lead and taking foot off the gas pedal in the fourth quarter. It's really hard to say. I'm really getting bogged down in the weeds there. And I don't know that it's that productive to think that much about it. Splitting hairs. I like Vander Ross again. I think Wyatt Young would be number 2, and Camden Brown would be my number 3. But honest to God, I think all 3 are really good options.
I agree. Like, and that's why I made the comment of like, if this is your wide receiver room and you're a 35-point underdog, like the other team just must be absolutely stacked. Yeah, and I would agree with you. Vander Ross, cleanest profile here all around. He's an easy start among the 3 here. Old Dominion and Rice both have pretty solid secondaries from what I recall. Let's see, Rice. Okay, Rice is 70th, so that's a better matchup. Maybe it's the run defense that they're pretty good. I knew they're good on one end of the defensive side of the ball, and then Old Dominion. Yeah, Old Dominion's pretty good, solid against the secondary. Giving up under 200 yards per game. But like you say, Camden Brown's just been such a beast recently. If they're going to score a touchdown passing, it's probably going his way.
All three are probably going to have a good day. Like I don't
Yeah.
know that
Yeah, and
you'll
again,
be
like
really
all
unlucky.
three are top 24 wide receivers in our projections this week. It's really hard to,
Yeah.
like you said, really hard to split hairs here. Brown has a higher chance. Oh, are we good? I lost everything for a second there. Are we good?
Oh, I mean, I can hear you. I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Let me check with the chat. Are we back? Can y'all hear us? Can y'all hear us? Give me a shout out in the chat if y'all can hear us. At a bit of a technical hiccup over here, so I just need some
Maybe
confirmation
must
out
be a
of the
storm
chat.
coming your way.
What'd you say?
Just saying, maybe there's a storm coming your way or something.
I don't think so. I know that people in the chat were complaining about Ohio, them having some storms up there. I know the Ohio. Okay, Rishi says we're all good. All right, appreciate you, Rishi.
Good.
Anyway, back to what I was saying here. Camden Brown, I think, is more likely to monopolize his team's touchdowns, or at least get a better share of it, versus North Texas. They got a bunch of dudes that could score. Right, like obviously Caleb Hawkins has just been ridiculous the last couple of weeks with his touchdowns, but then Dormer's a good wide receiver, Sides is a good wide receiver. Miles Coleman
Yeah.
is set to get some touchdown regression at some point during the season, right? So I think that's what's going to push me towards that. The other thing I might look at here is, again, the over-under here. Yeah, 55.5 for North Texas and Rice. That's pretty solid. And then Georgia Southern. If I can find Georgia Southern. Is Georgia Southern not listed here? Oh, there they are. Oh, it's abbreviated.
Oh wow.
That game says over under 62.5. Ultimate median favored by 12.5. Ooh. Yeah, I think
It's a pretty good one as
I think
well.
I'll go Camden Brown because of that. So, and it again, 12.5 point dogs. They might be playing from behind. So
Yeah, could be a good thing.
all right, next up, B. Johnstone says, hoping you will let me get away with including 4 because since it's playoff time. I don't know, Justin. Should we let him get away with it?
Yeah, why not? It's playoff time, as you mentioned. So go
Exactly.
ahead.
2 running backs here, full point PPR. Jeremiah Cobb versus Mercer this week. Wayshawn Parker versus Kansas State. Seth McGowan versus Vanderbilt. Or Daniel Hill versus Eastern Illinois. I will go ahead and say, because I see a couple Daniel Hill questions coming up, I would not start Daniel Hill this week. I know it's looked like he's like the main back at Alabama recently, but they are still running very much a committee over there, especially as Jam Miller gets healthier and healthier. I don't think that they're going to have a workhorse kind of guy going up against Eastern Illinois, in which case you're trying to guess who's going to score touchdowns in that game, and I think that's a dangerous game to play here in the playoffs. Justin, you can kind of piggyback off that, and do you share that same thought there, or what are your thoughts on all 4 of these guys?
No, I was just going to say that that's good to know. I mean, I feel bad now. I'm putting him in the. I did include his name in the Pigpen Weekly article I put out today for that nice matchup coming up. Just because, yeah, he was coming off 15 carries last weekend. I was like, well, maybe this FCS game this weekend you can catch fire there if you need to plug in running back. I assume most teams they're still in it right now probably don't need to be trying to pick up. Well, I suppose this guy's asking about Daniel Hill, so maybe that's not the case, but most teams probably have other options, better options, and certainly, the other options this commenter is mentioning, I think, are pretty good. Really like Jeremiah Cobb this weekend against Mercer. I think you can look at some comparable data points there versus Ball State. What he did, he had over 20 points. He'll probably again have over 20 points against Mercer. There's a lingering sort of thought in my mind that they may be super, super conservative, just sort of preparing for the Iron Bowl next weekend. But even with that, I mean, they're not using Ashton Daniels at quarterback. Somebody has to sort of take the ball on offense. They don't really have a lot of running backs left that are healthy or who haven't been dismissed from the team at this point. So I do think Jeremiah Cobb's going to get some solid work in this game, and assuming that happens, then he will score because this other team is really outmatched. Love Wayshawn Parker. He's really come on recently. He's become the running back we all thought that he would be when we were all drafting him this offseason. It took a little while, but he's kind of ascended into that RB1 role. And the coach Ham, his quote confirmed that much. I mean, he's been pretty direct about it, that Parker has separated himself and is definitely their clear RB1. And something to note is the quarterback, Devin Dampier, may not be a go this week, or if he is, he may be limited. Either way, I think Utah will be relying on the run game a lot this weekend against Kansas State, who defensively not as good as you would expect sort of typically that they are. So I think that's a good matchup for Utah. I think it'll be a close game. I think it's a game that they're going to run the ball a lot. And Seth McGowan's another one. He's a great name this week. They played Vanderbilt. I know sort of statistically Vanderbilt sort of shows that they're pretty solid, but I think we just saw, who was it? Actually, it was Jeremiah Cobb, right, a few weeks ago, have a pretty good day against Vanderbilt. And I think sort of run game wise, Auburn's probably pretty similar in terms of how good they are to Kentucky, just talent wise and whatnot. So if they could run the ball on Vanderbilt, I think Kentucky can probably run the ball on Vanderbilt. And again, McGowan, he's a starter. He's probably going to get a lot of touches in that game. So to me, 3 out of the 4, Cobb, Parker, McGowan are pretty clearly separated. I think Hill is more one where you're really taking a lot of risk. And if you really just wanted to go for some style points for some reason in the playoffs, you could try to pull that one off. I think you're much better off sort of considering these other 3. I like all 3 of them. I probably would choose Parker and McGowan from the sense of I know that they're going to be in competitive games that should go full 60 minutes, and there's no sort of, threat in the background that they're going to get pulled.
Mm-hmm.
One issue I have with Utah is they just use so many players. Even though Parker's getting the touches now, they do still use a lot of different players with a lot of different trick plays and gadget plays. How that looks this weekend without Devin Dampier, assuming he's not playing or that he's still limited, who knows? I don't know. Maybe they'll be more vanilla with Dampier not fully healthy. It's hard to say. But those 3, I really like those 3. I probably would choose Parker and McGowan out of those 2. I think we're choosing 2, right, for this question. Yeah, so those 2 I'm probably choosing just because I think they're going to be in fully competitive games. Whereas Cobb, you kind of have to worry, like, okay, is he going to get pulled after halftime, whatnot? So that's my thinking. But if you wanted to go with Cobb, it makes perfect sense to me as well.
Yeah, again, a quick thought on Daniel Hill. Again, so not to keep poo-pooing on Daniel Hill here, but like in these kind of games where he could end up seeing limited touches because, again, we're talking about an outmatched team here, and if Jam Miller's not fully healthy and they do need to rely on him for the Auburn game, again, you're going to get pulled there. But guys that do well in these kind of matchups against bad defenses on limited volume tend to be guys who have high breakaway percentages, right? So you're talking about 30 plus breakaway percentage. Breakaway percentage refers to designed runs that are 15 plus yards gained. 30% is a really good breakaway percentage number. Daniel Hill is on the season 17.1, and he had his first one against Oklahoma. Otherwise, he's just been a very inefficient back for the most part. And so I don't really see him as the kind of guy that can break away in this kind of game. Meanwhile, Jeremiah Cobb, if you had to start Cobb, I think you could feel much better about that because he's got like a 38% breakaway percentage. So just another thing to kind of keep an eye out for there when you're making these decisions. But I would agree. McGowan, did you know, Justin, that McGowan's a top 20 running back on the season in terms of fantasy points per game? Because it really feels like he's been real quiet this year, but he's just been a real steady Eddie kind of guy.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I'm not surprised. Yeah, as you mentioned, I know he's been pretty consistent, but because they had 2 running backs there at the beginning with Dowdell, but McGowan sort of very quickly established himself, and I guess he's just been really, really consistent all year.
All right. Yeah, so I would agree with you, McGowan and Parker for sure. Let's move on to Nathaniel Nokin's question here. He says, thanks for your help this season. Full PPR pick 2, Kejuan Brown at SMU, Claiborne versus Delaware, or Daniel Hill versus Eastern Illinois. We've already talked about Hill. We've already talked about Brown. So we'll talk a little bit more extensively about Claiborne here, but I'll just go ahead and say Brown, Claiborne, those are my guys.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's any. Would have been shocked if you had chosen Daniel Hill after what we just mentioned. Yeah, well, and yeah, so I think Claiborne's matchup is a pretty good one. I don't think you can ever really go wrong with him. I know he's been a little up and down, but I think his role is pretty well established, and they're playing a team that they should be able to run the football on. So I don't think there's any. You would hope so. I don't think there's any animosity there. And then Kejuan Brown, yeah, we mentioned him. It's a tough defense. that's one concern. But I think he's still probably safer than choosing Daniel Hill, who, as sort of for all the reasons Jared just mentioned, I think is that could be boom or bust there.
If we were talking about a regular season game, I'd be more for it. But again, playoff time, I think you just got to go with guys that have proven it a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
Because Alabama, yes, Hill fell into the end zone twice in the game against Oklahoma last week, but again, Alabama still couldn't really run the ball. They averaged on the day 2.3 yards per carry. Again, yes, this is Eastern Illinois, but his value isn't coming from anything that's consistent. So. Joe
Such a
Webb,
strange Alabama team. When was the last time Alabama couldn't run the football? To the way that they have this year.
I think I saw something that was this is the worst rushing team Alabama has had since the 1900s. I think I legitimately think it was before Bear Bryant was head coach. It's been that bad.
It wouldn't surprise me. Yeah.
Joe Webb's next question here says, thanks for all the time you put into this show. Need to start one quarterback in a 4-point passing touchdown league here. Connor Weigman versus TCU, Joe Fagnano versus Florida Atlantic, or Jake Retzlaff versus Temple. I think you got 3 really good options there. I ain't going to lie. Justin, pick this apart real quick. Which one are you going to go with?
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I mean, all 3 options are pretty good. I have Weigman in one league that I'm in the playoffs this week. Although it's a best ball, so I'm not choosing to start him. But I do feel pretty highly about him. I think that's a good matchup against TCU. I could easily see that one becoming a shootout. And the thing I like about Weigman is even though he doesn't really get a lot of rushing yards, he does just sort of accumulate rushing scores somehow. He's quite selfish around the end zone, which is always a great quality to have if you have the quarterback. Not so much if you have the running back of that team. We most of us have been there. It's not a nice feeling. But so that being said, Weigman, I do like. I like all 3. Obviously, they're all 3 are pretty good. Joe Fagnano, who I think they've got a good matchup this week. FAU, not just because FAU has a bad defense, but because they run plays very quickly as well. So just on sheer sort of plays and how many opportunities UConn's offense will get this weekend, it's hard to envision both the quarterback and the offense as a whole not having a good day. So both him and Weigman really like Retzlaff. He's been pretty steady this year. He's not that guy who's going to give you, sort of the opposite of Alontae Barnett. He's not the guy who's going to give you 50. Although I know he had a 4 rushing touchdown game randomly earlier this year, but he's just more sort of a steady 25-point guy, if my memory serves correct. And he also has a really sort of soft matchup. So I don't really know that there's one that stands out that much to me. I'd probably choose Joe Fagnano, number one, just because I know FAU is going to be running really high up tempo offenses as well. So it's just going to be so many plays run on both sides. It's just hard to see that failing.
You can probably
Weigman.
You can probably expect Veltkamp to gift UConn about 2 to 3 extra possessions with his interceptions as well.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt, right? So, and hopefully around the end zone. So, I mean, I think Joe Fagnano is probably number 1 for me. Weigman would be my number 2. Retzlaff is right there. We're splitting hairs.
We're splitting hairs so bad. I mean, look at our projections. All these guys within 1.3 points of each other. Honestly, pick your favorite player of the 3 and just roll with them, because he just clarified at the bottom of the chat that his other quarterback is Byron Brown. So it's you're not sitting Byron Brown, right? So it's
okay, yeah.
Maybe let me take a look at the actual matchups here, see if anything stands out. Again, over under 65.5, spread of a touchdown to UConn FAU game. That's gonna be real hard to beat. I ain't gonna lie. Tulane Temple about 10 points lower, still a good matchup, but I would say that kind of puts Fagnano above it. And then who's our last one? Oh, Connor Weigman.
It's not going to be 65, but it should be 50 something.
Yeah, 55.5, close spread, like you said. So it could end up being high scoring, but go with Fagnano, FAU. A lot of things going his way there. So. Next up is Trey. He says, hi, Jared. Hope your teams are doing well. Trey, thank you. My teams are doing well. We'll see after this weekend how well they're doing. But he needs to start 1 in full PPR here. Jakirian Turner at Georgia Tech, Adam Muhammad at UCLA, or burn my red shirt and start oh my god, I almost said Bojack Horseman. Bo Jackson versus Rutgers. Quite the motley crew you got here, Trey.
Yeah.
Because forgive me if I'm wrong. Did Desmond Reed get hurt again? Because like he came back.
Yeah.
He did. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
he left the game like fully. Yeah.
Okay, so that would make sense why you then go Turner there. Adam Muhammad, very much a risk there because Jonah Coleman is supposed to be back this week. Again, we'll see how that goes as the week goes on here. And then you got Bo Jackson, who is the number one. Well, our projections actually have Adam Muhammad as our RB3, so I guess our projections are assuming that Jonah Coleman does not come back this week. Regardless, you got Bo Jackson there, who's the RB1 for Ohio State in terms of touches, not so much in terms of touchdowns. Could that be fixed here? Maybe. Yeah, I would do them as the projections have them here, but Trey, you got to be real on it in terms of what's going on with Washington this week. Because yeah, if Jonah Coleman isn't playing this week, Muhammad has a fantastic matchup against UCLA that could pay you huge dividends there. It could also end up with you getting 30 yards because he's the backup because Coleman's back. Turner is the safest play here because, like you said, Reed's hurt again. Sounds like he's not going to be back for this game. Georgia Tech's defense is terrible.
Yeah.
You're probably going to get at least 15 points out of Turner as the RB1 for Pitt going up against Georgia Tech. Muhammad, that's your 30-plus point upside kind of play, but you have to know he's the RB1. So, Justin, do you think of this any differently?
No, I'm pretty aligned, and I'm going to just kind of try to speak it into existence because Nate has Muhammad in my home league who I'm playing in the playoffs this week, and so I very much hope that Coleman is back, and I think he will be back this week. That's just sort of my read on what has been communicated. I mean, it sounds like he warmed up last week and could have gone if absolutely necessary.
Yeah,
I think they were just holding him out for this final stretch against the Big Ten, UCLA, and Oregon. These final two opponents that they have. So I do think Coleman's coming back this week, and he might not be in a full capacity, but at the very least, I think it would be enough to scare you away from Muhammad. Bo Jackson, again, like you mentioned, I mean, yeah, he's the starter kind of, but it's very hard to sort of rely on him at Ohio State. I mean, and against Rutgers, it could be a blowout, and you really don't know, like, okay, well, who's going to score? If he happens to score, it could be a good game. If not, it'll be a pretty forgettable one. Turner, I actually think is in for a really good week. I think this game is going to have a lot of scoring. Georgia Tech, as you mentioned, terrible defense on both fronts. And Turner, they really like that. Pitt staff have really liked Turner, and he's done really well. Like when Desmond Reed has been out, even when Desmond Reed is around, he's had a couple of good games. His head coach Narduzzi calls him, just Des Reed 2.0. So I think he's just going to get like 20 or so touches this game. He's basically just going to be a Desmond Reed sort of replacement. He's not as good as Desmond Reed, obviously, but I think he's going to be pretty good in this game. He'll look as good as Desmond Reed in this game because Georgia Tech's defense won't be able to tackle. So yeah, he's sort of the safe floor, and I think he offers some pretty good upside in this one. So he's an easy sort of smash pick for me out of this group.
All righty. Robert Lanson, your next question deals with Adam Muhammad. If Coleman ends up not being active, yeah, if Coleman's not able to go, Muhammad's a fantastic start against UCLA. Felipe Mendoza, who I assume is the third redheaded stepbrother of Alonzo and Fernando Mendoza there. In the home stretch here, Jared, appreciate you still doing your thing. I'm starting Carson Hansen this week for Iowa State matchup. Cam Cook, obviously, but need a third between Deshaun Bishop versus Florida or Devon Claiborne versus Delaware. Thank you, sir. Don't overthink this one, Felipe. Go with Claiborne, a workhorse back, going up against a G5 opponent, probably the best opponent that he's getting all season long. Deshaun Bishop's part of a committee there at Tennessee. He's looked really good in games. Florida probably is on quit watch, so I can expect Tennessee to probably win this game decently. But that matchup for Claiborne's just way too good. I wouldn't overthink this one. Justin, you have anything to add?
No, I'm right there with you.
Cool. Rishi asks, I know this is 4 players, but I would be very thankful. Choose 2 at running back, 1 at flex. We're gonna pick 2 players here. Kendrick Raphael versus Stanford, Easton Messer versus UConn, Kentrell Bullock versus Southern Miss, or Kajon Owens versus Jacksonville State. Ooh, got a bunch of really good players there. And I'm surprised that you're being required to sit any of them because I think all of those guys are really good starts this week. Justin, as I'm plugging these into the projections, what are your initial thoughts here?
Yeah, well, I agree with you, Jared. It's all 4 pretty good options, and as I've said earlier in the show, and many many times when I appear on here, I always am more partial to the running backs just because their workload is usually a little more steady. Easton Messer, sort of a unique receiver in a unique system there. He gets a lot of targets. But still, wide receivers I find are more inherently volatile when compared to running backs. Um, I do like Kentrell Bullock a lot this week versus Southern Miss. I know there's another running back who's kind of emerged there. I think his name is PJ Martin,
Yeah.
who's been getting some carries, but Bullock still seems to be pretty much the premium sort of alpha pig in that offense, and he gets a lot of carries. He scores touchdowns. He's not one that I think we need to overthink too much, and the matchup isn't one that like scares me off. There's nothing really too notable about Southern Miss, as far as I remember, at least. Um, and then I think Keyshawn Owens is the 4th player he'd mentioned, Jared.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember who is he playing.
He is playing
FIU.
against Jacksonville State.
Well, so that's another good matchup. And Owens has been a little bit more, if I remember correctly, hit or miss this year. He's been a little bit more up and down. That Jacksonville State game is probably going to be a really good one, though, and they're both probably going to want to run the ball a lot. Gosh, and then Easton Messer versus UConn. I mean, that's going to be a pretty high scoring game. And then Raphael is playing Stanford. I haven't really paid as much attention to Kendrick Raphael recently. I don't know like what he's done over his last few games. I can look it up on Fantrax just to refresh my memory.
You said Raphael, right?
Bear with me. Yeah, Raphael. Just
touchdowns galore.
Okay, he's been finding
the end zone a lot.
Which...
I think 2 of his last 3 games he had 3 touchdowns.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I'm pulling him up here on Fantrax. I did not realize he was seeing this level of work.
Another quiet one.
Yeah, well, just looking at that almost compels me to say, yeah, start him no matter what.
Especially against Stanford, terrible defense.
Yeah. So, to be honest, we're picking 2. Raphael and Kentrell Bullock are 2 smash plays then for me.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I'm scrolling through the chat here. Normal PPR, so I assume that's 0 PPR. I would agree. I would lean towards the running backs at that point. As good as Messer is, I would take another look at your wide receiver room to make sure you can't flip Messer into one of those spots. So, we're gonna try to rapid fire here. We got about 7 minutes left here, and we actually got a lot of questions tonight. I know a lot of it's been back and forth between Justin and I, so we haven't been able to get quite through these questions as rapidly as we normally do, but we'll get through it here. John K, quick question here, Justin. Pick 2 quarterbacks between Arch Manning going up against Arkansas, Jeff Sims going up against, I think, not West Virginia. It's another...
Colorado, I think
Colorado, yeah. And then Taylor Green versus Texas. To me, Sims and Arch, better defenses they're going up against.
Yeah, for the reasons we talked about earlier with Talon, seems like a bit of a risk.
Cool. Bill Lacing says, hey, Jared, another quarterback question this week. Start 2, 6-point passing touchdown. Brad Jackson versus UL Monroe. Haynes King versus Pitt. Or Drew Messamaker at Rice. I think just given what we've seen, I know Drew Messamaker is just staring at us as QB5 in our projections right here. But given what Caleb Hawkins has been doing the last couple of weeks, where he's just sucking up so many touchdowns, it makes Messamaker hard to really start. And you got Brad Jackson and Haynes King, another one of our top 4 quarterbacks right here. And I wouldn't be surprised if Brad Jackson isn't that far. Yeah, there he is, top 20 right there. I'd personally have him even higher than that. I think you just go with 2 safe guys in Brad Jackson and Haynes King. Justin, your thoughts?
I'm in full agreement. Yeah, no, you don't need to take the risk of Messamaker.
Yep. The Turtle Wheezy says, yo, Jared, big fan. Appreciate you, Turtle Wheezy. Also says that he sits all his Georgia players whenever they sit Alabama. I don't blame you.
Yeah, smart.
Robert Lanson here, quarterback question. Sawyer Robertson versus Arizona in 6-point passing touchdown league. Number 2 passer in terms of points per game. Number 1 versus the number 1 passing defense. Would you start him in a 2 QB league if my other quarterback is Bachmeier? So Bachmeier versus Robertson, which way are you going here?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, they're both pretty solid. Sawyer Robinson's, I think, been better overall on the year. And who did they? Yeah, they're playing Arizona. I think statistically, Arizona has a solid defense. I don't know that I really buy it, but that's more of just me going off vibes and a gut feeling, not really anything empirical. Um, so I don't know.
Yeah, top 10 versus the pass, they are.
Okay, well, yeah, that's probably there's probably something to that then. So maybe I'd roll with Buckmeyer then just based off the matchup. But yeah, I don't know. I don't feel that strongly about it.
Bachmeier's been real steady Eddie for the most part. I cannot get anything to pull up all of a sudden. What the heck? Excuse me, y'all. UMass Ohio.
Fantrax sometimes randomly just sort of.
Nah, it's all my tabs right now. I think I got too many tabs open right now. But yeah, Bachmeier has been. Can't spell Bachmeier either. Bachmeier's been pretty steady Eddie the last couple of weeks. Really outside of that matchup against Texas Tech, where everybody in the Big 12 has been struggling against Texas Tech. Your floor is 23 points. I think I'd rather go that than try to play around with Sawyer Robertson going up against one of the tougher defenses in Arizona. So just go that direction, I would say. John White, Ryan Williams versus Eastern Illinois, or Jaden Barnes versus Marshall. I'd rather go Barnes. Ryan Williams has been a real disappointment this year. Just not had the big games that he even really had last year, and definitely is mimicking more the inconsistency we saw in the second half of last year, except it's been the whole year this year. So I go Barnes. Great matchup. App State versus Marshall. Same for you, Justin?
Yeah, well, Barnes has just been better really overall this year too, right? I mean, I think it's just a better sort of commodity at wide receiver, so not too much to overthink there.
Let's see. That's an NFL question there, Jason Ortiz. Sorry, buddy, we don't do that. Trying to see if there's anybody here. There we go. Miss Rev 42. Hi, Jared and Justin. Playoff time. Indeed, it is. PPR pick 1 here. Katron Allen versus Nebraska. Lincoln Pear versus UL Monroe, or Keyshawn Owens versus Jacksonville State. Raphael is the other starter. Yeah, I'd keep Raphael there for sure. Mm-hmm. To me, this is between Pear and Keyshawn Owens. Allen versus Nebraska. That's a very bad matchup. Nebraska's no, never mind. I got it flipped again. Nebraska, elite versus the pass, terrible versus the run. So, you got three good matchups there. Justin, where would you go? Allen, Pear, or Keyshawn Owens?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you throwing it to me while you stall on your decision. I also don't really have like a definitive.
Listen, man, you don't got to call me out like that.
No, I mean, I guess when you do it solo, there's nobody here to do that to you. But yeah, no, I mean, all three are pretty good, as you mentioned. Gosh, I don't know. Again, every decision we're splitting hairs, I'd have to kind of, I don't know, also stall and think about it. I guess, Penn State, Nick Singleton kind of emerged, like, I don't know, a few weeks ago, but then it fell back again this past week. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure Katron's still been the guy for them.
Yeah.
I know Texas State has a good matchup this weekend. I can't remember who they're playing UL Monroe. So I do like Lincoln Pear as well. And then who was the third running back?
Keyshawn Owens again. He's not in the C2C projection for some reason. I've already let Chris Moxley know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and he's been kind of hit or miss. Like he's a little more up and down. Not that all three of these running backs have been like literally consistent every single week. I don't know. They're all very similar. Oh, gosh, I don't know. I feel like I'm just flipping a coin in my head. Like I think I'm just choosing one out of the hat.
I'm gonna go with my own personal projections here, and that is going to be Katron Allen. I got him personally projected for 21 points this week. Katron Owens projected at 14 points, and Pear, I think, was projected at like 16.7 points. So Allen, just let him run all over that Nebraska D there. So I'm letting the computer think for me, but again, otherwise, I think all
Mhm.
three are pretty solid matchups.
Yeah, they're
All
all. Yeah, I don't think you can really go wrong with any of those. So.
right, let's go. Let's finish up here with Justin Nottingham and Joe Scott's question. We'll knock you two out real quick, and then we'll finish up. Justin Nottingham, flex question, 1 point PPR, Darius Taylor versus Northwestern, Jordan Hudson, wide receiver out of SMU, going up against Louisville. Who would you rather do there?
Oh, yeah. Well, I actually have both of these players on my home league team this week in the playoffs. So I hope they both have great performances. Um, yeah, again, I think both, I don't know that you can really go wrong with either. Yeah, as I've said many times, I generally just default to the running back. I think Taylor, he was back last week. They were just in a blowout, and I think they pulled him in the third quarter. But he was clearly, they relied on him quite a bit throughout the game, both as a runner and a receiver. So I'm assuming he's fully healthy. And this is a good matchup. Northwestern, I think they're going to be able to run the ball on them. And even better, I think Northwestern has a good enough offense to sort of keep Minnesota also on their heels. So it should be a good game all the way to the end. Could be a perfect game script, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
for Darius Taylor. You always have to worry that he's just going to pick up something again, a nagging sort of injury in the first quarter or something like that. But and then Jordan Hudson, he's been great recently, right? And
Yeah,
this is I know Louisville's kind of got a solid team statistically, defensively. I think they're probably ranked decently.
they
Though I don't
are
know.
30. They're 36 versus the pass.
Okay, so not like anything like incredible, but maybe yeah, better third within the FBS. I think I would go with Darius Taylor just because he's a running back. We know his role. I know it's he's always got the injury concern, but I assume he's healthy now, and I think you just kind of have to take that and assume he's going to get probably 20 touches this week. Whereas Hudson, he's a wide receiver. It's just more volatile. You never really know what's going to happen. He's been really good recently. He probably will have another good week, but I'd rather go to running back.
Yeah, I'm trying to look here real quick because again, the matchup does favor Darius Taylor because Northwestern's pretty average versus the run versus Louisville is a little bit better versus the pass. Louisville SMU 53.5 over under versus Minnesota though. I think it like that Minnesota Northwestern game. I cannot imagine that is
Oh, I'm sure it's a low.
40 and
Yeah.
a half. That's pretty rough. But also those matchups tend to kind of favor running backs a little bit, right? Because that's both teams wanting to keep it on the ground and everything. Um,
Well, and if someone's going to score for Minnesota, like it feels so much more likely that Darius Taylor would be
yeah.
that of Minnesota versus like Hudson for Louisville or for SMU. I mean, there's a bunch of players that could score for them. So,
Agreed. All right, we'll finish up with one last question here from Joe Scott. He says, I have Jeremiah Smith, and he's banged up and looking iffy for this week. I'm probably going to pivot for him. Do we go between these three? We got London Montgomery from Eastern Carolina, Jordan Simmons from Georgia State going up against Troy, or Vander Ross from Toledo going up against Ball State. Full point PPR, 150 yard bonus, 5 points for that.
okay.
I would say, just personally off the top of my head, like Montgomery, I expect to have a good week because I like his matchup this week. I don't know if he hits 150 yards. Simmons and Vander Ross, I think, have better chances of hitting that number. So that kind of narrows it down there for me. But full PPR, I think I'm going to lean towards Vander Ross there. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I understand that thinking, and I agree for the most part. Simmons has been on fire like the last 2 weeks, and this is another great matchup in Troy. Again, I don't know like exactly where they rank statistically, but I don't think they have a very good run defense. Troy just overall this year is not very good. Um, so Simmons to me just feels like he could have like the biggest day of any of those. I
Mm-hmm.
could easily see him scoring multiple times and definitely getting 150 yards. I think Simmons would be my pick. But Van der Ross, a really clean profile. I don't think you can go wrong picking with him either.
Yeah.
It's kind of just flip a coin, kind of however you feel on the day. I mean, the PPR, as Jared mentioned, does kind of favor a little bit, or at least sort of equalizes a little bit for the wide receivers. Um, but again, I think with Simmons, he's going to get 20, 25 carries. And, I like that I know that role. And so, yeah, there's a lot to like with both. Simmons would be my pick, but I think either of those picks.
To be fair to Simmons, like look at his receiving work recently: 3 catches,
Oh,
3
yeah,
catches, 5 catches, 6 catches. Like that helps him out a lot.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I wouldn't blame you for either one, but I think Van der Ross is probably the safer play because as much as I love Simmons, these late breakout running backs, just for some reason, they flare right at the end of the season, but they can drop off real quick as well for some stupid reason.
That's true. Yeah, especially in the G5. So.
Oh, yeah. Last question here from Luke Probosco. I'm just going to answer this one. He says, full point PPR, Jonah Coleman or Pefele Ashlock. And I will just say emphatically, screw Pefele Ashlock. He's going to score 30 points now. Anyway, appreciate all of you guys for coming on. This was a fun stream. Justin, it was great to have you on. I'm hoping we can do this more next year on a more consistent basis. It's fun having you here, somebody to bounce off of. Just remind everybody real quick where they can find you, Justin, all your work and what they can kind of expect here as the season kind of closes out.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no problem. And thanks so much for bringing me on. This is great, man. So thank you for reaching out. I really appreciate that. So you can find me on Twitter at VolumePigs. On my Twitter profile, you can find my Substack, volumepigs.com. I write CFF stuff. So, and you can find me at Campus to Ken during the off season. I write articles over there as well.
All right, guys, you heard it here. With that, we've come to the end of our show. Appreciate all of you guys for listening. Again, if you have not already, make sure you leave a like down below. Make sure you comment on the stream when it comes out later. Subscribe if you are for some reason not already doing so for this channel. If you're on the podcast listening to this later, make sure you follow the show. Make sure you leave a 5-star review wherever you can. Make sure you guys check out the rest of the Campus to Canton podcast network for shows ranging on pretty much anything you can think of related to the college fantasy game. We'll see you guys next week for one more waiver show and one last start-sit show. And then, guys, it'll be the end of the season. Might have some content coming after that. I'm not entirely sure. Still working on that. But you got that little teaser for now. Until then, really appreciate you guys, and I hope you guys have a wonderful and blessed week. Good luck in the semifinals, y'all. Oh, God. Hit the wrong button. There we go.